That was a learning experience.
The San Francisco Shock beat the Dallas Fuel 3-1 last weekend. That wouldn't be really notable except for the fact that the Fuel beat the Shock 3-0 in the May Melee just a few weeks prior. Of course, Dallas went on to win the May Melee, going through several other top teams in NA and APAC to do so, and that got a lot of people thinking that Dallas was far and away the best team in the league, and especially coming off a 7-match winning streak were the clear favorites against San Francisco. Now, I'm not going to get into winning streaks and hot teams and how that's generally a myth, but the games that Dallas lost in April actually do matter. And the Fuel came into this matchup with a worse regular season record than the Shock, for whatever that's worth. Now, Dallas does seem to be a good team, so them beating the Shock wouldn't have been a shock, but did you invest too much in the knowledge that they beat the Shock early in the season when you were thinking about this match? Did that really matter, and should it have influenced your thinking? Anyone who spent even the slightest bit of time following sports or esports knows that teams often play each other more than once per season, and they don't always sweep the schedule. In other words, just because Team A beat Team B at some point in the season doesn't mean B can't or won't beat Team A later. Sometimes they won't, especially if A is much better than B and there are relatively few games between them. But if A and B are reasonably close in talent level, it would make sense for them to each win games against each other. Still, we tend to fall into the trap of recency bias, which gives greater importance to recent events, especially if the circumstances seem similar. I think we've all seen cases where some team or athlete does poorly against an opponent and we think, how did that happen? They dominated them in their last matchup. But sometimes it does happen that way. Sometimes the winning team keeps winning. But how often does that happen? To figure that out in terms of the Overwatch League, I went back and examined the 2019 season. I chose that season over 2020 because, 2020 was a mess schedule-wise, and I don't want to evaluate trends using that season if I can avoid it at all. And 2018 had fewer teams and the disaster that was the Shanghai Dragons, so 2019 it is. Now, in that season, there were 86 times that two teams played against each other exactly twice. Obviously, one team won the first matchup. How often do you think that same team won their second match? Go on, I'll give you a moment to think about it. The answer is 49 times. That leaves just 37 times when the team split the season series 1-1. That's really not an overwhelming margin, as it means that the 2-0 sweep happened just 57% of the time. That's really close to how it is in the NFL, where teams in the same division play each other twice a year in the regular season. Sweeps happen about 58% of the time there. For what it's worth, there were 15 cases of teams playing each other 3 times in 2019, with 8 3-0 sweeps and 7 2-1 results, or 53% sweeps. Small sample size, but still about as close as you can get to the previous result. Usually when you saw a 2-0 sweep, it meant that one team was clearly better than the other. I mean, you would have expected Vancouver to beat Florida twice, or San Francisco to beat Dallas twice in 2019, and that's just what happened. But when you're talking about two teams of fairly equal skill level, you shouldn't let one recent game color your expectations too much. Take last season when San Francisco beat Philadelphia in the finals of the Countdown Cup. The two teams played each other again just 6 days later, and the Fusion won 3-0. I'm actually a little surprised that the numbers on 2-game sweeps came out so close to the NFL's results as they did. Unlike the NFL, the Overwatch League often changes the rules during the season, whether through patches or hero pools, or in the case of 2019, the switch from GOATs to 2-2-2 late in the season. You'd think that would lead to more volatility. Maybe home and away games, as well as the greater possibility for injuries in the NFL, adds a similar random factor. Whatever the case, the next time someone makes fun of your picks by saying that the team that lost to another team clearly can't beat them, stand your ground and let them know that, they might be right, but only around 57% of the time. Thank you so much for watching this video. You know all the buttons you can press, so I won't bore you by listing them here, but do check out owlstats.net for more Overwatch League stats and info, and follow me on Twitter @owlstatsnet.